And we're live. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you're joining us from. Welcome to the last TolaData webinar of 2022. I can't believe I'm saying those words. I can't believe we're at that point in the year already. It's quite wild to think that it's almost December and it's our last webinar for the year, but I'm really excited for this one today. We're going to wait a couple of minutes to allow people time to join us and get set up. Maybe you're joining us with a cup of coffee in the morning time, or you're sitting down after your day's work to learn more about making changes that last, digital Emini tools for your sustainability projects. We're really excited to walk you through everything we've prepared for today. Equally, hello to anybody who is joining us watching the recording on YouTube. I'm not sure if everybody joining us live is aware, but these webinars are recorded and saved on the TolaData YouTube channel every time. So if you miss anything, you need to go back, or you want to share with maybe some colleagues, you're more than welcome to do so by accessing the TolaData YouTube channel. But yeah, we're super excited today to present, as I said, the final TolaData webinar of 2022. Our title today is Making Changes That Last, and the reason we've chosen this title is because we are focusing on digital Emini, how to choose those tools, what that process might look like, and then some examples in TolaData of how you might set up your system for sustainability projects in particular. Of course, it's quite a wide umbrella term, but we're going to be speaking quite generally, and hopefully with your interaction and your feedback, we'll be able to pinpoint some different insights from anybody who joins us and really take on some different angles and look at this from a few different lenses. So now that we've gotten about 2 minutes in, hopefully people are finding the time to join us. Let's get started. So I've already been speaking for a moment and haven't even introduced myself, but my name is Hannah Maroney. You can probably see this on screen. I'm a consultant at TolaData. I have been for about 2.5 years now with an NGO background. I'm really excited to present you this webinar today with my lovely colleague, Sive.
Hey.
Sive,
Sure. So as you can see, my name is Sive. I am a customer success executive at Tola. And essentially what that is I accompany you through all that is TolaData and your journey with us, whether that's maybe me guiding you through the platform, giving you some training, or just general questions. Don't hesitate to get in touch with our support team. And we're also joined by another customer success executive actually in the comment section today, by Anya. So if you have any burning questions that you kind of want answered on the low key, don't hesitate to just get in touch with Anya there in the YouTube comments, and she'll be more than happy to help you out, I'm sure.
Thanks, Sive. Yeah, we have Anya in the background. She's added a comment in YouTube. I can pop it up on screen here now. As Sive said, if you have some questions that are burning and you want to ask straight away, or if you need help with anything, you can write to Anya in those comments there. We are also going to have some time for questions during the presentation. Throughout the webinar, we're going to be using an interactive tool where you'll be able to answer a poll that we have prepared if you have some questions on the presentation. In general, what we're going to be looking at today is a pretty general discussion of digital tools for monitoring and evaluation. So we're going to begin by kind of laying this foundation. Why is Emini important? Sometimes I think about this and I think, well, is there any point in inserting this element in a webinar where people who are joining are going to agree that Emini is important? But actually, I think laying that foundation and kind of giving us a stepping stone maybe to go from when we're discussing these questions and looking at the digital tools from different angles, to be able to refer to really the core of why we need this type of digitization, why these tools are useful and what we want them to do. It's important to kind of have that foundation there. So we'll begin with that and then go straight into why do we want to digitize? Why do we want to use digital tools? And what's available for us to use and then how we might actually choose them. Now, Sive and I are TolaData experts, and Sive has prepared a fantastic example in TolaData of how to bring all of the data that you collect together in one place in a monitoring and evaluation platform. So I'm really excited to see the demo that Sive has prepared for us today. We'll discuss then how to take those results further, tell the world what you achieved. What's the point of collecting all this beautiful data if you can't present it, and that will be through aggregation, disaggregation, dashboard visualization. It's a bit of a mouthful. I feel pleased that I got around that one. And again, Sive will show us what that dashboard visualization looks like. And then finally, some questions and discussion. So let's get straight into it. I mentioned it was going to be interactive. I'm hoping that everyone has been able to access the presentation okay. Again, if there are any issues, I guess if you haven't accessed it, then you can't hear me. But if you have issues, you can speak to us in the comments section. But we're going to begin with a bit of a warm-up, okay? So we want to go to menti.com and use the code that you see on the left, or if you're maybe joining from your PC and you want to scan the QR code if you have your phone, that will also work. And we're going to go straight to a poll. So I'll leave this here for a moment so that people can access it. We also have on the top of the screen here that we're seeing, you can go to www.menti.com and use the code that you're seeing on top. And what we're asking is, what element do you think matters most in your monitoring and evaluation processes? So we have added 5 examples. The 5 examples we have here are transparency and accountability, efficient use of resources, data-driven decision-making, early identification of problems, and improved project performance. Now, these are 5 examples that we have come up with together as the TolaData team. If you have more, we would love for you to add them maybe in the comments, because of course these are 5 reasons that you might be practicing Emini, but they're not going to necessarily be the only reasons, of course. So this poll is moving quite quickly. We can see data-driven decision-making and improved project performance are coming out on top at the moment. Transparency and accountability and early identification of problems are in joint second place. It's a bit of an even distribution there between those 4. Efficient use of resources maybe isn't as important to those of you joining us as something like data-driven decision-making. Personally, I agree. If I were voting in this poll, I think my number 1 would go to data-driven decision-making. But of course, these are all different reasons why we engage in Emini processes. This poll will actually stay there. So if you want to have a little think about it, if you want to come back to it, these questions will be available at least for the next few minutes before we move on to the next one. But I'm actually going to move straight away onto the next section of the presentation. So we have some examples here of why Emini is important to us as a team at TolaData. These are things we've learned from our own professional experience, but also from the client base that we have at TolaData. So there are now over 100 organizations using the platform. And as Sive said, her job is really helping them to get set up in the platform, answering questions, really learning about their needs. And it's quite similar for me too. So I will help with the onboarding, really learn about the specific needs of all of the different organizations that will come to TolaData, looking for some assistance or guidance, or looking to digitize their Emini processes, maybe move from, not necessarily even moving from paper-based to digital, but moving maybe from using Excel to try and keep all of this information together, or moving from maybe kind of scattered processes where everything isn't really super streamlined across different departments and things, and wanting to put it all in one place. So we've learned an awful lot about what's important to lots of different types of organizations, and that's what we're hoping to share today, and also get a lot of your feedback on. So we have some of these graphics where I've included here these 5 elements that we included in the poll, from transparency and accountability to data-driven decision-making, etc. This is actually pulled from the TolaData blog. So if you want to check that out, I personally would highly recommend it, but maybe you can let us know what you think as well. We want to go straight into the key elements of an Emini plan. The reason we have specified these 4 really key elements is because, of course, there are many other factors which are going to come into making your Emini plan, right? But what we really want to focus on today is the bread and butter of what you're doing. So you need your logic model, your results framework, theory of change, whatever way you want to phrase it, your indicator plan and your log frame. You want to be using smart indicators, potentially. We've had some debate recently on LinkedIn about the different types of indicators, or how you should be creating your indicator plan. And really the smart process came out on top. But if you think differently, we would also love to hear that. You can tell I'm really pushing for some interaction in the comments, but it's because as it's our last webinar of the year, we'd be really happy to hear from you guys. And also, if you're joining retroactively, if you're watching the recording back, you can still add your comments and we'll come and check them out later on. So please do let us know what you think. When we talk about smart indicators, we're saying specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So these are the 5 key factors that we're looking at when creating those indicators in that plan. And then, of course, having an implementation plan, including a data collection plan. The data collection plan is one that is particularly pertinent to maybe the conversation we're having today, because we're going to be talking about the different types of digital tools that we're using. So as you can see, I have the Menti instructions back on screen here at the moment. And what I want to ask now is, what digital tools are you using for your data collection, for your Emini processes in general? Again, this is something that myself and my colleagues have been chatting to lots of different professionals about on LinkedIn over the last number of months, to try and learn as much as possible about the digital tools that are being widely used by our network, by people in the sector. And there are some patterns we're noticing, but I'd love to hear what that looks like for you guys who are joining us today. So if you could let us know maybe what digital tools are you using. Maybe start with for your data collection. So that could be something like Excel, Survey CTO, SurveyMonkey, KoBoToolbox is a great one. We actually have, excuse me, in TolaData an API integration with KoBoToolbox. So a lot of TolaData's current users are also avid KoBoToolbox users. I'm a fan of Kobo myself. I think it's a really excellent survey tool. ODK as well, very common one that's cropped up. Kobo Collect. Someone's using TolaData. That's awesome. That's what we love to see. TolaData also has its own inbuilt form builder. So if you want to, create a public form in TolaData, that's possible too. Kobo has come up 3 times here. So yeah, I can really see that this is a popular one. Tableau as well, nice. Again, you can keep adding to these. Maybe we can even come back to this slide if it's taking people a moment. Excel as well, right? I think sometimes, and maybe I'm part of the problem, Excel can get a little bit of a bad rep when we have these conversations sometimes. But in terms of usability, accessibility, data collection in Excel, I don't see a problem with. And especially when you're using a different digital tool for maybe your more complex, shall we say, Emini processes, to be able to have that data collected in Excel, you can import that into whatever tool you choose to use. But maybe this is the discussion we can have at the moment, right? So why do we want to use digital tools for Emini? Some of you may be familiar with this cartoon. We've shared it a couple of times this year, where this poor man is walking into this flurry of paperwork and saying, I have some paperwork to catch up on. If I'm not back in 2 days, organize a search and rescue team. We share this because this is what we're trying to avoid, right? We don't want to be lost in this flurry of information. We want to avoid data silos. We want everything together in one place, easily accessible, high quality. This is why we're using digital tools for our monitoring and evaluation. So we have on screen here 6 examples. Again, this is another case of if you guys have some more to add, it would be really great. You can put them in the YouTube comments. If you're joining us from TolaData.com, you're not going to be able to add those comments underneath. So I would say either move into the YouTube, or when we move to the next section, you'll be able to give us some feedback in Mentimeter as well. So just to let you know that that's coming too. But why are we using digital tools? Firstly, improve data quality. It is a simple fact that with manual entry and manual collection, human error, the risk of human error increases, right? It is kind of impossible to argue. So doing these processes digitally is going to decrease that error. You can also automate your data processing. I think these are quite related concepts, right? Because if your data processing is automated, then you're also going to decrease that risk of error. You're also going to make it move a lot quicker, in my opinion. So for things like calculations, everything that's listed here, aggregation, analysis, visualization, automating those processes makes everybody's life easier. It also makes the results that you're reading more likely to be accurate, right? Real-time insights, being able to use digital tools for your Emini will mean the right people have the right access to the information that's relevant to them as quickly as possible. So being able to immediately share data, being able to set up these workflows where, for example, if data is added to an indicator, it is immediately populating in a chart elsewhere for the donor to be able to read, or for your teammate to be able to check in on really quickly. Being able to automate those kind of workflows really is going to save time. It's going to make sure that the right people, again, have access to the latest information, and you're not waiting for someone to update a spreadsheet manually or send a document with the latest information. It's happening in a really streamlined way. You can also connect easily with remote locations. The more I go through these, the more I realize actually they're all quite linked to one another, but being able to connect with sites in the field, people working very internationally, using digital tools makes that easier. It bridges that gap. It's quite simple. Implementing best practices, guiding your teams in how data is collected, how you analyze it, ensuring that everyone is following the same steps. This is easier when you've digitized the processes, because not only can everything be laid out in a very clear way, it also, the accessibility of digital tools means that there's kind of no excuse, right? Everyone has access to these steps. Everyone can see how it's worked previously. Everyone can see how things should work at the moment. You can assign specific tasks to the right team members. You can make sure that everything is stored in a way that's accessible to all of your teams. So best practices will connect back to improved data quality, will connect to sharing your insights. All of these are kind of interlinked in their own different ways. And then finally, what we have here is knowledge management and data retention. Again, somewhat linked to your digital tools, ensuring all of your data is stored centrally, available for all of your staff. What we've highlighted here is during the project, but also after the project has finished. And I think this is quite an important one, because people do things differently, right? And sometimes you might have just an end line evaluation. And I think if that's your internal processes, then making sure that everything has been really clearly documented throughout the entire life cycle of the project is absolutely imperative. Because if it's not clear, especially if you have perhaps, like, for example, like an external evaluator coming in and trying to quickly learn about a project and the different processes that were involved and the data that was collected, the knowledge management and data retention that's offered by a digital tool makes this really, really easy, really seamless and clear for everybody involved. And that goes for during the life cycle of the project as well. So we've seen in Mentimeter as well some great examples of what tools are already out there. Some of you, good few of you mentioned KoBoToolbox. I'm also a Kobo fan, ODK. Somebody said they're using TolaData. That's really great. I hope that you find this webinar useful today if you're already a TolaData user. We've also included some other examples here of what tools you might be using for your data collection. We've kind of divided them into 3 columns. So firstly, your data collection, and then your management and reporting, where we have some different tools you might be using for that kind of middle step. So of course, TolaData falls in here as a monitoring and evaluation platform. We've also included some other examples. And then finally, some tools you might be using for a more advanced analysis once you have done this middle phase, or if you require different types of results. I'm going to go back to this poll quickly to see. We've had another vote of confidence in KoBoToolbox and also Comcare. Yeah, I have met some people recently who have just deployed Comcare in some new projects, and I've heard some good things too. So that is really great. Thank you all for the interaction. It's really useful. It's exactly what we're looking for today. We've already done actually this section on the questions, so I'm going to keep going. How do you choose those digital tools? You've decided that they're important. Clearly, a lot of you joining us today have already made a lot of those choices, which ones you're going to use for your collection, for your analysis, whatever it might be. How you did that, if you want to add some comments and let us know what that looked like for you, you're more than welcome to do so. Again, we have some examples here of how you might choose those digital tools yourself. We want, firstly, the digital tool to be appropriate to your context and your requirements. Basically, I think this is probably the most obvious indicator of how you're going to choose, right? So what type of project are you working on? You have to start asking questions like, how many organizations are involved? Is it an alliance of many organizations? Is it a consortium? Are you all coming together for one very large program? Are you running different projects which fall under different thematic areas? What's like the level of complexity, you know? You really need to think about that level of context, and that's when you're probably generating things like your RFPs. You might have a requirements document that you'll share with different tools so that they can let you know how they're going to fulfill them, etc. Within that kind of level of complexity, we're going to think about integration with other tools. And what we've written here is there are no tools that do everything. And that's true, because if there was one tool that did everything, you could be pretty certain that it's not filling ticking all of the boxes 100%. Nobody is an expert in everything. That's why we specialize, and that's why all of these wonderful tools exist. So you want to think about how different tools might be flexible. So how does your data collection tool, is it able to integrate with your Emini tool? Are you able to export the results of your Emini tool to share elsewhere? This type of workflow and data flow, is it possible? Make that check before you make the decision about what tools you're going to use. Online and offline capabilities. Do you need offline data collection capabilities? Are you working in the field with no access to the internet? Always an important question. And then maybe you can use an online tool for the analysis section when you're back in the office and you have that offline data ready to upload into an online tool. Data protection, it's always going to be important. You have to comply with the local regulations. For example, we're based in Germany, so TolaData has to comply with the GDPR. So that's going to change depending on where you're based. User friendliness. My opinion, one of the most important factors, especially when you're rolling out a brand new tool to a team of people, you don't need to put more work on your colleagues' plates. It needs to be something that's going to add value rather than give them more work to do. And then finally, the cost. The cost is always a question. There's no need to custom build a tool, in my opinion, because so many off-the-shelf tools exist with options for customization. So I think the kind of cost that goes into building a really super custom tool, which is 100% built for exact requirements. Actually, there's flexibility in pre-existing tools that I think should be considered maybe before going straight to needing something customized. We've included this slide here of what an integrated data cycle with TolaData looks like. So just to give you, we've mentioned TolaData a few times, and I know probably many of you who join us and many of you who watch this back are already familiar. But in case you aren't, what that process looks like is you have your data collection, which we've learned lots of you are using Kobo, maybe you're using, honestly, any other survey or questionnaire data collection tool. Then you can either import via an API or via any other. I've never met a data collection tool that can't be exported to a CSV, which is why we've included import via CSV file here. And then it can be managed, tracked, and reported upon in the last section, all in TolaData. Or you can also export your data sets for a further analysis if you want to. So you've heard enough from me. We've done enough kind of background into what these processes look like. I'd love to pass over to Sive to show you what this can look like in action.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. I can't believe it's the last one of the year. It's gone in a flash. It has. Oh my God. But in any case, I'm super excited to bring you onto TolaData and to show off a project that I made that was based on SDG 11. So this is obviously sustainability SDG, and it's based around creating a more sustainable urban, living plan and being able to have an inclusive space for everyone. But before I really go deep into that, I kind of want to actually give you a bit of an orientation around the platform. And so this is why we're starting off here on the homepage. Maybe I'll go in a little bit more here. That should appear a bit clearer, I think. So on this homepage, this is generally what you're going to see when you log in. You're going to have all of your different projects here. And if you're like me, you have a lot on your plate here. You're linked to many different projects. So what I often do generally first is I filter. And I can do this by country, by status, but I'm going to do it now by these custom groups. And I've created a specific custom group to enable me to filter all the projects that are involved in achieving SDG goals here. So this gives me now a quick handy list to give me a shortcut to get to my project here, which will be going into more depth. But of course, another essential part of the orientation and navigation of this platform is our navigation panel. And this is on the left-hand side, as you can see here. So we're currently on the project level, which gives us, of course, the access to all of the different projects. But as we head down to these indented sections, we have different areas such as details, and the details level essentially gives us a lot of context around the projects that we're leading. So as you can see here, we get some fundamental information on the name, of course, the status of its implementation, important dates, who is funding the project, maybe the vision or the goal of the project that you're running. And you of course got some good, interesting budgetary information up here on the right hand side to let you know how that is rolling out. The few following tabs here also provide you just a lot of context surrounding this project. Of course, maybe the sites, the affected communities, points of engagement. This can include, of course, contacts and contact numbers, as well as geographical coordinates. Next, you can include a timeline, which is quite handy just to break down the project into different phases. You have an area to include all important actors like your stakeholders, your donors, just to maybe keep the requirements in mind. It's useful. And then under documents here, you can link all of the important and pertinent documents to your project and just have them all in one accessible place instead of being lost or, missing somewhere. The next two tabs I'll just briefly introduce. These are actually data analysis tools. So the first one of which is reporting periods. And this enables you to create your own customizable targets. On the system already, we actually do allow you to set up, annual targets, semi-annual, quarterly, and this is according to the ISO standard. But if you do have stakeholders that require you to report on a non-conventional basis or every 2.5 months, etc., that is something you can actually configure on this. So it's very flexible if you need to, have ranges that are really not reflective of the general calendar year. And then the next one here is our disaggregation types. And I'm sure as we all know, this is super useful for us to be able to break down the information to get the really useful nuggets of valuable info on, the data that we have and how do, certain policies that we're using or, certain processes that we're doing, do they affect different communities? Do they affect different vendors in a different way? And maybe is that something we want to realign or readjust? So now this is just the general context of the project. We are now going to go into the project management section, which is called the activity section. This is locatable just underneath the detail section here. And this lends itself really to the strategy and the step-by-step actionable plan that you want to put forward for your project. Now, as you can see, this is very useful actually for project managers. With the way in which it is up, you can see quite clearly that, with this hierarchical setup, users can see what are the, essential, the main activities, how are they broken up, what are the important milestones that are coming up, the progress of each individual activity, who is responsible. You can get great information on the deadlines, the budget, and even also how these activities are measured. So this allows project managers to come in, have a quick check, and then get on to what they need to do. But then additionally, when it comes to people who are using this, there's even further features that can be used, such as budgets and also approval workflows. And this again just helps you harmonize as a team to work together on these actions and these plans. And just additionally, for you project managers out there, you can check out this chart view for a more macro level look at when these activities are taking place. And these are just very useful to kind of keep an idea of different phases and also maybe the milestones, which are highlighted in orange here. Now we're just going to briefly look at the indicator section because we're actually going to spend a bit more time there a bit later. So this is the next one down. Here, of course, is where you're going to be setting up your log frame, your KPIs, your regular indicators. And this is essentially the place where you're going to be tracking, monitoring, and doing a bit of data analysis on them here. We, of course, will go through how to create your log frame, how it's on the inside of these indicators. So you'll get all the info just in a moment. And the next section we're going to head into is the forms section. And with our forms, as a user has said that they're using already, you can create your own customizable forms that you can circulate to non-TolaData users. So you can use this to share with the affected community you're working with or just the general public. And once they fill in that information, that is fed immediately onto the software itself. What is actually quite useful with these forms is that they can actually be templated. So if you're leading a lot of different projects and create a form, if you use them in all your different projects, the data will then be standardized and you can compare and contrast them a lot easier. So that is definitely a benefit of being able to template these. And they're then fed into this next section, the table section here. And they will appear in a data set. So this is essentially your treasure trove of data. And it not only will, get information fed in through TolaData forms, but as Anna also has been discussing, this is a highly integratable tool. So if you do use actually different data collection tools, that's no problem at all. you can actually go over here and import them via the third-party tools that we're connected with, such as Kobo, Google Sheet, OneDrive, ONM. And then for anything else, as Hannah was saying, I've never come across a data collection tool that does not export in CSV. And, also very handy to upload it in an Excel as I've done here. And finally, I'll be showing you a bit later on our dashboards, the funnest part. And this is essentially like a window into the results of your project. And it's how you're going to be generating these really dynamic reports, a lot of beautiful graphs and charts to really impress all of your stakeholders and donors. I won't show you a dashboard. That's something you'll have to wait for at the end. So I'm going to hop back now to the indicator section, and we're just going to go through the project that I've set up and the log frame that I've used. So as you can see here, there's a lot of information to take in. So maybe just to provide some context, we're just going to go straight into the result framework section. So here is essentially where I've kind of done the overview of my plan, where I've done my log frame. And at the top of this result framework, I've put my goal, my SDG 11, and it's to make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. And so with this result framework, I've broken that down into more, concrete plans and goals. So I have two outcomes here, the first of which is encouraging accessibility and inclusive public spaces. And two ways in which I've gone about doing that is promoting a robust transport network, increasing different lines, increasing access to it, and also creating more public spaces that make people feel very safe and that they're green and that allow people to gather together. The next outcome we have here is lowering levels of urban pollution. And that is going to be achieved, hopefully, through improved air quality and also improved waste disposal mechanisms. I created this very easily by using this parent-child model. So I just do an easy click to add another level. And I can add nice colors to them, have them, nicely organized, however I like them. The reason that I might actually start off with this is not only does it kind of help concretize the idea in my head of how the plan and how the project's going to go, but additionally, when it comes to you wanting to put in these indicators, these provide a handy heading for all of the different sections. So if you see here, all the elements that I actually had in the results framework appear here. So when you go to, add an indicator or even bulk import your indicator, that's an option. You can, look at these different headings and, maybe modify or change your indicators so that they're really, direct and they're targeting these different goals that you set out. So as you can see with this list, there is so much info, but so much valuable information. You can see, what are the important indicators that I have here. I check out these KPIs, how are they getting on, what's the format of these, how often are they being collected, and what is the status. We also have a lot of info about, the actual versus targets, as well as, when it was last updated, etc. And this again for project managers, it's just such a handy way of, dipping in, dipping out, being able to get a lot of the information very quickly. So perhaps to give you an idea as to, what the inner workings of these indicators look like, I'm going to just select this one that we have here. So percentage of population who have access to public transport. And if we head in there, we have the indicator detail section. And this is where you're going to be modifying certain bits that you see on that list there. So you might be modifying, the name of the indicator. You might be changing its format. You could change where it sits in your overall plan, how often it's collected, and if it's a KPI. And then as we scroll down toward the bottom here, you have a lot of space actually to put a lot of, information about, the reasons why collecting info on this indicator, how you're going about it, what do you expect from this? And then down in the note section, I've included also a space here to say, what were the we were garnering? Was there any adaptations we needed to do? Is it going as planned? And as Hannah was mentioning, when you're working as a team and maybe new members are coming on or you're getting a consultant on, it's really important that you have a framework and you have a standard, practice in place of what you're using so people can, get up to speed very quickly, but also you're improving best practices, and people are collecting data in a very consistent and a standard way, which is really important. And further down the bottom, you also have a space here to include the source of the information, how are you using it, why are you using it, and how often you're reporting on it. So now if we want to, set up some intermediate targets and, add some disaggregations, we're going to head over to the Targets and Disaggregations tab here. Under this tab, you can, of course, modify the target that you've set. You can include a baseline, which I have in this case, include your unit of measure, and select your desired direction of progress. I want this rate to go up, so I want more people to have, or I want to know of more people who have access to public transport. But if it's the case that you're monitoring rate of infant mortality, you might want that to be decreasing, which is why that's an option here. Now down below, we have, of course, the periodic targets, or as I mentioned, they're kind of like intermediary targets, and it's how you kind of break down your targets either by month, quarter, by semi-annual, year, or annually. And I mentioned before that you can also use your own customized targets. That's, of course, something that you can use here if you have them. And as you can see, I have created some quarterly targets for this indicator that I want to reach. And once I've set this up, what the system will do, it will now automatically compare my actuals against these targets. And this is going to be very useful for us to have this, data analysis, immediate data analysis. And down below, I've included several different disaggregations that I want to get from the data I input. So I want to know more about the gender of the population, the regions from which they are from, and maybe if they have disabilities, does this affect how they respond to the question? So now I'm going to be showing you how do we go about inputting data onto this indicator. So we're going to head to the collected data section. Here you'll see I have a few different collected values here already, but if I was to add a new one, selecting here, I would have two options. I can either do manual entry or I can pull from a data table. I can start off now just quickly with manual entry. So you can see I can input a collected value here. So let's say 40% access. I can input a date collected. So this might be the date in which the data was, taken down for the survey. So let's say it was 1st of November. I've actually already filled out the mandatory cells, but if I'd like, I can include more information about this collected value, including an identifier, and this allows you to kind of distinguish between multiple collected values. I can input a site, for example. I can include evidence and also include notes. And again, this is kind of just improving the best practices within your organization. It's just kind of reminding you, maybe it might be an idea to include this along with that data. And then down below, I can break this information up. So let's say by gender, perhaps 19% of that were women, 20% of that result were men, and 1% was other. I can hit save there. And it's collected. And my actual versus target will update depending on the total actuals formula here. I have a few different options. If I want to get the average of all of my data items, I can also hit 2. The other option I can use from this section is pulling from a data table. And this can be useful if you have a lot of data and you want to perform additional calculations, or you want to manipulate it in a different way. So it's a very similar setup to the manual entry, but now, of course, we're pulling from a data set that I've uploaded earlier. In this case, I want to know maybe the number of transport users. So I'll select this. And then with regard to the calculation formula, I just want to know the general average, how many used the transport. So the result here is 47%. That's great for me to know. But if you have a quick look down here, we have 2 additional features. So we have what we call a condition here. I often like to describe this as sort of a filtration system. So say, for example, I want to know specifically from this result, how many people surveyed from the south region use public transport. So if I want to look at this, I'll add a condition. I'll select region from the condition column. I'll equal it to south. Now, if you see the current result is 47, if I hit south, we see that rises quite dramatically up to 56. So I can see that, you know, in all this data, actually, this, you know, Southerners really like using their transport. And if it's the case that I just want a general breakdown of this result and see how many per region generally take the transport, I can do that, of course, as well. And so this gives me an overarching view of all of these different areas and their level of access to the transport network. Then when it comes to, you know, you feeding in this information and you kind of want to start getting some analysis on this, what is it looking like? Are you achieving your targets? You can head over to the results summary, and that's the next tab over here. And as you can see, you have just some initial very basic charts that are actually according to our fictional donor targets that we've set up. And if we look at some periodic targets that I set up earlier, you know, the quarterly ones, I can see how the actuals here compare against the targets. And finally, I can head over to the disaggregation results. And here I get, again, a nice breakdown of how this survey, you know, breaks down into gender, how does it break down into sexual orientations, etc. And now when you're in the position of, you know, you've, you know, filled in this information and you might report on your SDG indicators, you might be wondering, well, how do I bridge that gap? How do I bring this information forward? If you're using this indicator, for example, to report, what Hannah will be going into a little bit more will be, you know, aggregation. And so, for example, I'm using this indicator here to feed into an SDG indicator for the SDG 11 goal that I have. So I've been able to link the actuals that I have here to the SDG up here. And the way in which we know what's an aggregated indicator or a regular indicator on this platform is if you have a check these symbols to these indicators, you'll see that a stack of coins usually indicates that it's a regular indicator, and then these more galactic symbols are actually the aggregated indicator. So to have a check on which indicator are linked, I'll select that. And here I'll see all of the indicators that are feeding now into this SDG indicator that I've set up. As it's a percentage indicator, I'm measuring it, you know, by an average. But if you're using numeric, you might be using actually a different formula. So if you head into managing indicators there, you have an option of selecting many different types of calculations and formulas, such as sum, subtraction, multiplication, and division. And then further down below, you can actually extract data from other projects. So, you know, you can aggregate from within, but also across projects, if that is something you're interested by. And if you're using numeric indicators, you can also use different tools such as weighting and also adjustments. And that is something that I think Hannah might discuss more with you about. So with that, I might actually hand over to her right now and she can tell us a little bit more.
Perfect. Thank you, Saib. That's the perfect segue into exactly what I wanted to mention. So thank you for showing us how that aggregation works and actually for taking us through the entire project. I always love seeing the different ones that you'll create and taking us through the story of how it's going. So it's awesome to see. But you're completely right. What I wanted to mention next was just once you have done this, you've done the data collection, you've decided on your digital tools, you have even moved into the midline kind of project lifecycle monitoring and evaluation processes, but now you want to take those results even further. And that's when we start talking about exactly what Saibi were just showing us, the aggregation of those standard indicators across the projects. And the reason why I'm specifying across the projects is because something that we've seen in your demo side is that you can create a project in TolaData, right? But I really want to emphasize that this word project is just that. It's a word, and you can actually change that label in the system if you want it to be a program or a package, or depending on how you're using it. Some people have labeled it like organization. It depends on what you're working on, right? So really a project in TolaData lingo is a unit of data. And the reason I'm stressing that is because you can really break those units down into as many sub-projects as you want, as many thematic areas as you want. And then when they're divided, or maybe you have different projects for different organizations that are coming together to work on one large program, what you can do is actually share the data across those projects and then aggregate your indicators, as Sai was just showing us, not only in one project or data unit, but actually across multiple. So maybe you want to bring together a number of different sustainability projects you're working on to feed that SDG 11 overarching goal that you have, or maybe you have one specific donor who really has some KPIs that need to be fed into just one area. This is possible through that kind of cross-project aggregation. And then another thing, Sive, you mentioned was this kind of weighting, adjusting the proportions of each project or each indicator that's feeding those aggregated indicators. And this is also something we want to take into account. So for example, if you're looking at something like maybe training courses on sustainable practices being held in different areas, the likelihood of maybe multiple attendance by one participant to those courses is quite high. So for example, if I'm in a region where I can access 2 different course centers really easily, it's likely I'm going to attend both. So if you're tracking something like the number of participants, maybe you need to adjust for the idea that actually one person might be counted on multiple lists, and think about how you want to weight that. And I think estimation is often a good way of being able to mitigate against that, perhaps over-reporting or even under-reporting. But there are, multiple ways. This is actually something that we've talked about recently enough on the TolaData blog. So if you want to check that out, then I would recommend doing so. Another way then that you can take your results further that I'm super excited for Sive to share with us is with dashboards. So you teased it there in your demo, Sive, that you would show us the dashboard soon. So I would love if you could take us in there and show us what this project dashboard looks like.
Absolutely. If we're back there, perfect. I'll absolutely do that. So when we're getting to this point of, setting up our reports, setting up our dashboards, it can be quite a stressful period. And with Emini, it's kind of crunch time when you're trying to consolidate all that data and bring it all together and be able to coherently put it across for your stakeholders and donors. So if we head on down now to the dashboard section, which you'll find on the bottom part of the panel, you'll see that there is a huge list here. And again, these are just all the dashboards that have been linked to. But dashboards can actually be quite a personal thing. So if you want to make dashboards for yourself, maybe just to practice, you can do that. You can share them internally, with your team. And of course, Apple will be saying you can share them externally, which is quite exciting. So if I look at one that I set up specifically for this project, we're going to look at the dashboard I set up for this sustainable city. And as you can see here, as I scroll down, you're going to see a lot of different types of what we call widgets. And they're the kind of square, rectangular little boxes that you see here. And these help, put forward all of the different results that you had during your project. How does your data break down? How does your actuals versus your targets look like? Maybe some geolocational data, just again, bring more of the context into the report. You can include some contextual narrative information here, and have some nice line charts giving you percentage achieved. And as you can see, a lot of different variations, a lot of different options, some images to keep them interested. And yeah, just to be able to provide them with a nice narrative and a nice story, and to respond very directly to the requirements maybe the stakeholders have provided. So that's why the data section is very customizable, very flexible, allows you to put in, whatever data that you want, helps you break it down in, whichever way you'd like to break that down. And of course, as you can see, a lot of different colors, but if this is not your style, of course, you can change this style to reflect the color of your organization or just personal preference. And these different widgets can, change size, they can be maneuvered around to whatever you want them to be. So nothing is going to, you're not going to be stopped from really putting your own personal touch on here. And as I was mentioning, this is something that is very collaborative. You can do it obviously by yourself, but you can invite your team to come along and to be able to work on this together with you, so you're not alone, because it can be a lonely time. So you can see I've invited a few different users here, given them a level of access, so they have certain powers. Some of them can't delete anything, which gives me some peace of mind, but they can also just help me edit and work on those results and putting them across coherently. And then when it comes to the stage of wanting to share this information, we're going to head over to the settings here. And in this tab, you'll see that we have below the opportunity to share with an individual user, with a project, with every user, but also we can share it externally. As I'm sure you've seen here, there's a URL. It's actually an unguessable generated URL. I'll go here. And so when it comes to me wanting to share this with someone, I'll go over to copy link. And simply what I'll do is either I'll send this in an email or via chat. And then when the viewer uses this in their browser and searches it, they're going to have this nice corkboard view of what I've put on my dashboard. And the beauty of this dashboard is that once I've set up, it kind of takes care of itself. The data is automatically updated so that whenever the user visits or revisits this information, if there's been any changes regarding the indicators in my project, that will actually update here. So I don't have to go change the indicator, change the dashboard back and forth. That doesn't happen. This automatically is fed here, so you can have peace of mind that they're seeing everything. And this is so useful to be able to create a dialogue with your stakeholders so they can be more invested. They can see how things have changed over the course of the project and provide advice, maybe guidance, and just feel as though they're more part of it, which is, very key for the relationship. So it's a very useful, very dynamic, and very fun, shall we say, part of the website, which I really like. And of course, this can be printed if that is something that you'd like as well. Maybe Anya, you've shared it in the comments section. You can have a look at this yourself in your own time. And just as a measure of data protection, you should know if at any point you feel as though this dashboard has been shared maybe too widely, you can of course unshare it and then generate a new link so that it can be a bit more private. And with that, I might hand back over then to you, Anna.
Nice, Sive, thank you. You're right, Anya has added that link in the chat. So if you're live with us on YouTube or watching back on YouTube, you can check out the public version of that dashboard and see what Sive's created. We don't have loads of time left, so I want to really quickly say that if you've liked what you've seen, you can try TolaData out for yourself. There are completely no strings attached. You don't need to enter any payment information, anything at all. Nothing like this. Play around with the tool. Let us know what you think of it. That's all we're asking. And yeah, if you'd like to learn a little bit more, you can also reach out to us at info@toladata.com, and we can talk a bit more specifically about maybe your needs, or if you'd like to learn more about the tool, any general questions you have, reach out to us straight away. And to finish up the session, I know we're really cutting it fine, but if anyone would like to hang on for another few minutes, we do want to leave with a round of questions. So we're going to go to Menti again. Hopefully some of you are already there. We have set up kind of a free text element where if you have questions from the presentation, you can add them here. We'll answer them live. If you don't have time, add them to info@toladata.com, send them there. I can see we have one already. Thanks, you're so welcome. If we found TolaData was missing an element our NGO needed, can the software be modified? Really good question. Yes, the software can be modified. So there are kind of two elements to this response, I think. Firstly, TolaData is actually in constant development. So we have a fantastic team of developers who are always working on the tool. And it's developed in line with feedback from current and potential users who have seen the tool, checked it out for themselves, and really responded with some feedback about how they would like to use it. So every feature that we have implemented over the last number of years has actually been something that an organization has requested in one way or another. Oftentimes it's something we'll hear from multiple users, and then we'll put that on our roadmap. That's how it works. Also, if you have a very specific and maybe more urgent requirement, we do offer personalized customization. So that is something that what we would do is you would speak to maybe a member of the more client-facing side in TolaData, like Sive or myself, or one of the other wonderful members of our team. And we would actually put you in touch with our product team. We'd have a meeting together where you could tell us about your needs, and the product team would discuss maybe the feasibility of building that for you.
Okay, what do we have here? Is there a minimum number of licenses our NGO can purchase? Also a great question. So this is quite pertinent for TolaData because unlike different softwares, we actually calculate the prices by our licenses. So on TolaData, we only have a very small minimum number of licenses, which is 2. So you can get a package from that number. And this can go up to any number that you want. So this can be infinite if you'd like. We'd be more than happy. But we have a very useful pricing tool, in fact, on our website. So if you head to TolaData.com and head over to the price tab, which might be there, perfect. There's actually a really useful tool there you can use. There's a little toggle, and depending on the number of user licenses that you like or envisage that you want to have, you can just very easily just drag and see what the cost is. We have set numbers, but do know if you have a number that doesn't correspond to the 2, 5, 10 numbers that we have there, say if you want 9 users, that is also totally fine as well. Just get in contact with us and we can let you know next steps. And yeah, I think that's it. I don't know if you need additional things to add to that, Hannah.
No, I don't have anything to add. I think other than to say thank you to everybody who has joined us. Thank you to everybody who's going to watch this in the future, because I've really noticed on the YouTube channel that these videos really tend to only increase their viewership over as the months pass. So if you're joining us from the future, thank you. I hope you're having a lovely week and you've enjoyed the webinar. If you have joined multiple TolaData webinars this year, thank you very, very much for your viewership, for hopefully your interaction and feedback. We have really, really enjoyed hosting them this year, and we also, as much as we very much plan to do them next year, we want your feedback on their format. What type of format works for you? Does these live streams, does that work? Would something more like a Zoom be interesting for you? You have the email address here, info@toladata.com. Any feedback is super appreciated. You can also put it in the YouTube comments. But other than that, thank you. And I hope this has been beneficial. We've really enjoyed sharing this with you today. And maybe, Sive, if you have any final words.
Yeah, sure. It's been so much fun this year to be able to show with you, interact with you, and just have so much more cool and interesting conversations. We absolutely hope that continues on next year, and want to bring you more into the sphere of things. So looking forward to hearing more from you, and see you next year, I guess.
Totally. Thanks so much, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye.